episode of the Better Two podcast is brought to you by Kitty Mystic and M.Needom, author of My Days with the Dark Muse, as well as Love is Worth Waiting For. Hi, gang. Donna here. Thanks for tuning into the Better Two podcast. Today's guest is a friend of the show, Peter Paul Parker. And Peter tells us today about his dream method. As well, we go all over the place. We talk about the UFO situation and pyramids and planting a garden and seeds. And, well, just stay tuned because it's a fascinating conversation. Welcome back, Peter. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. We've just had all sort of seasons in one, as it were. We've had a warm, cool, cold, wet, and now it's getting cold, and now it's getting warmer again. So, and this is in the space of a day.
That is no, I understand. I live in Chicago. And it is the same way. Chicago is so much the same way because I remember going to work one day and it was like 80, and by the time we got home that night, it was like 32.
Unbelievable.
So how do you function with that? You know, it's almost impossible to do that, but you get used to it. You bring whatever jacket you need and that's it.
Yeah. I bought, I used to have one jacket for the summer, one for the winter. Now I've got one for the kind of winter, summer, now summer, winter. And so, yeah, I had to get a few more jackets, but yeah, you got to really try and gauge what's going to happen, and it is difficult because I used to get prone to colds, not so much now, but I used to, and that's when I used to get my really worst colds. Is when I got caught out outside without enough clothes on. It's not good for me. I don't like it. I like my comfort.
Well, and let's be. My husband would always say the one job you can get wrong 95% of the time and still keep your job is the weatherman.
Yes, yes. My wife got to the point where she had 4 different weather companies coming up telling her the weather. And she said, not one of them's right today. And she was getting really stressed about it. I said, I think the best thing to do is just ignore it, and just go with what happens in the morning and then what happens in the evening, because they can't predict the weather. They can't predict it. There's a guy who was predicting it, a really interesting guy who was looking at sunspots. And I've kind of lost his website, but he was looking at sunspots. And he was the most accurate because he was predicting when the sunspots happened and when a major weather change happened on the planet. And it was very accurate, actually, but they seemed to have pushed him to the side and come up with these other big companies that were running the weather, especially over here in the UK. And it's just rubbish. It's just all rubbish.
The thing is, if you think about the sunspots, it affects the magnetic pull and the polarization of the Earth's atmosphere. So therefore, yes, it's going to have some play. But no, we can't do that. It's much better to have a computer algorithm in all the weather models. We've run 4 different models, and the European model says, and the American model says, and they're totally different.
Yeah.
So
they're doing that with everything now, aren't they? Models and algorithms.
Yeah.
So you when you advertise, you advertise with an algorithm. When your medical procedures now done with an algorithm, everything's done with an algorithm or predictions. Or I just find this incredible that we've got all these intelligent, well-versed people who've trained to be professionals in their field that aren't being listened to at all. It's just like, what are you doing here? So yeah, to algorithms is the weather is just one element of many different elements of why we're going towards algorithms and AI, which I don't think is a bad thing because it can produce good things. But if you rely on it without human intelligence being involved with it as well, because surely we're the best to know what's happening in our lives. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a major issue that needs to be addressed. And a lot of people are actually speaking up about it now, which I find interesting. So,
well, yeah. I mean, let's think about all the technology we have and think about the fact that one EMP, electric magnetic pulse, could take everything down, our cars, our phones, our communication, our power, because everything is, and then the thing is, some of us could survive without the electronics. And if you have an older car without an electronic start, you're golden.
Yeah.
But what about the generations that have no concept of what it's like to live without it?
Well, they got a major problem, I think, because it's going to be like rabbits in the headlights. I remember growing up, we had power cuts and we had to go to candles and we had to get board games out or do some sort of entertainment with guitars or something like that, or a piano. And we found ways to entertain ourselves. We even found ways of cooking with colour gas, little cookers when the power cuts were going on for a few days. And it was really good fun. It was really nice to have that family time together and live by candlelight. It felt like going back into Henry VIII's time when there was no electricity. But now I think because of how this next generation has come up, it would be a major issue getting out into nature and trying to forage for food and things like that. I think that would be a major issue. We've got our own vegetable patch at the back of our garden, so we're learning to grow food. And I've learned ways of cleaning water and things like that in case something like that happens. I'm not a prepper or anything like that, but it's just nice to know that. It's nice to know how your food grows and seeing the cycles of life and understanding the energy. Like you're talking about pulses coming from the sun, you see the energies of the season. And when you see, wow, the moon's been strong today, you see the seeds growing bigger, because when you plant, when the sun is beginning to wax rather than wane, right at the beginning of that time, the seeds grow bigger. And I've tested this with my garden and also with a pyramid. It's like a pyramid with a sacred symbol underneath it. I put my seeds in that. They were broad bean seeds. And I just did it because my friend bought it. He saw that I was getting into like Ki Gong and energy and all this kind of stuff, meditation. He bought me this because he was Polish. And the Polish used to swear blind by putting their razor blades into pyramids to keep them sharp. So I thought, yeah, all right, I'll give this a go. I'm completely skeptical about it, thinking, all right, but I'll try it because he's a good friend. And I did it. So I put the broad beans in this like bronze, it was like a copper pyramid with this sacred symbol. I don't know if that had anything to do with it. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. I don't know. But I put them in there and I left the other seeds outside of the pyramid. I planted them at least double the size. And I thought, nah, that must have been a fluke. So the next year, I did the same thing, same result, double the size. I went, wow. So all my seeds now go into this little triangle thing, this little pyramid thing. So quite busy. But I was blown away. And then listening to we went to a champagne manufacturer here in England. And he said he swears blind by planting his grapevine by the moon.
Okay, yeah.
And I went, well, okay. All right, we'll give it a go. So I've been doing that and I'm putting it in the seeds, waiting for the waxing of the moon before, as it's a full moon and coming into the waxing period, plant the seeds then, sure enough, most of the plants come up. It's just, we need to come back to our planet because our planet is absolutely phenomenal. We need to come back to us because we are phenomenal.
Right, well, I mean, people here, they're like, oh, we've had a very mild winter. We didn't have a lot of snow. And people are like, oh, I'm so glad we didn't have that much snow. And I'm like, you guys are missing a big picture here. Because without all that snowpack that we normally have, if we have a hot summer, we're in for a drought. But nobody thinks that way. No. Just thinking of the inconvenience. It's like, but with the snow, it gives us a nice foundation to have the soil enriched and we'll have that water there. But if it's not there, and then they don't realize that depending on how your house is built, your slab can shift. There's more potential for fires. I mean, it's like you really have to reel back in and look at what is around you, look at nature itself. And as you said, look at us. What are we doing? What are we giving back to the planet? Are we just taking?
And it's about resources, isn't it? And it's become too much about resources and not enough about us. We should be loving ourselves and not loving our cell phones or like our smartphones or our computers. We should be loving ourselves, and we seem to have been taking from the planet all the time. And I'm not saying the technology is bad, but it seems to be, well, they build obsolescence into it. So therefore you need to buy the next latest one and let the last one fade and die, as it were. And where I remember when we used to buy, you'd buy a washing machine or a fridge, and you just knew it was going to last you 20 years or 15 years or whatever. Now people go, well, that did well. That your washing machine lasted 4 years. That's really good. I'm thinking, what? More white garbage going into the recycling. And then you look at the recycling, even that's not done properly. And you've got all the plastic. People go on about being environmentalists and climate change. I'm really worried about the environment because of what we're putting into it, not because of the natural rhythms of climate change, which is we're at the end of a climate cycle now, but because of what we're doing to it, i.e. we're building obsolescence, which means the breaking down of the products that we're buying, and there's no way to get rid of them. So we've got all this plastic and all this other stuff that's coming out, and it's causing major problems all over the world. And it's the cheaper countries or the countries who are getting paid for to take the rubbish. And then you've got these big piles of garbage everywhere, like in Africa and places like that, poorer countries, that people are getting sick from this because it's going toxic because of all the toxicity and the paint and everything like that. It's one big mess. And that's what when people say to me about climate change and things like that, it's one of the first things I say. We're destroying this planet. It's not about taxing us, more about paying more tax to try and heal it up. Because what's that going to do? What it is actually doing something to stop it happening, i.e. people with the greed, take, and addressing that and saying, well, how much more can they pay their ancestry to survive on this planet? Is their great grandchildren, like billions and billions and billions, into these corporations to look after them. And I'm not a socialist or anything like that, because I like the idea of people being able to thrive on the planet. I love that idea because I think we should do, because we're amazing. But I think also when people start to grab and they're in the positions of grabbing, that's where I see where it's all going wrong, because they grab and they just throw away. They're not worried about the end product. All they're worried about is the bottom line.
In the 70s, early 80s, we used to have a commercial over here with the Maytag Repairman. And the Maytag was a company that made dishwashers and washing machines and stuff. And they would always pride themselves that the Maytag Repairman was lonely because no one ever called him because their products were so good. Wow. We had pride. It's just like the union, look for the union label, because when you bought clothes and you knew the union label was there, it was a good, solid organization. But even our clothes have become that. Our clothes have become disposable. And to segue back to what you were saying about products, we have an upright freezer, or I have an upright freezer, and the digital plate broke. And so the freezer quit working. And some people just said, well, it's just time to get a new one. No, I went online. I went on YouTube. I saw that you can replace it. So I found the tutorial. I ordered the part and I fixed it. Amazing. And the thing is, if we actually took the time to fix the products that are broken instead of going, oh, well, I'll just get a new one. And yeah, our phones do become, it's like we're going to give you an upgrade. We're going to give you an update. Oh, guess what? I'm sorry. It turned it into a brick. You're going to have to get a new phone now. Yeah. It's absolutely incredible. Yeah, we used to have these little shops here. I'm sure you had the same, where you'd go into these shops and it was just all full of little boxes with little screws and little bits and pieces in it. And you'd take whatever you're trying to get fixed to the man on the shelf. He was usually a bit dusty because he'd been fixing things all day. And he would look at something, scratch his head a little bit, and then go to a little box in the corner of the shop, pull something out and fix it up. And you go, wow, what a skill that was. And that was all gone. And my wife and I, we noticed that when those shops started to disappear. And it was just these other shops of recycling, actually the rubbish that had been thrown away, or say smartphones that like 1 year old were coming out in these sort of exchange shops. I'm thinking, well, they're only 1 year old. Why are they in the exchange shops? I didn't realize this was turning over so quickly, but it isn't now so much. Apparently the smartphone sort of need to get the latest one is kind of dying down a little bit, but it all needs to die down. We need to really think about being sustainable in our home. Make it, comfortable, get the things you like around you, get the art or the technology that you like around and get it really comfortable. There's nothing wrong with that, but try and get things to last, because it's just ridiculous going from
what I remember going from vinyl, which was a brilliant product, to CD, which was an okay product, to MP3, which you've lost so much quality in the music.
And don't forget cassettes that are in.
Cassettes were just after that. Yeah, they were kind of around the vinyl time. And that was good quality. Yeah. Forgot about cassettes. Yeah, and CDs. And you can see this whole depreciation of quality. It's like this shirt I've got here is like a organic cotton from India. And I love it because it's very basic. It's just got a nice collar, nice shirt, lovely color. Every time you wash it, it comes out this brilliant white. You don't have to worry about it too much. The ironing is not too fussy either. But it's not expensive, but it's great clothing. I love it. And I've got lots of clothing like that now that I just love. And it's not particularly fancy or expensive, but it's good quality and robust. So I can wear it again and again rather than having... I have still got from my rock days some fancy shirts and things like that are expensive because that's what you had to do is to wear the expensive stuff. But I'll still look after them and I'll still wear them occasionally. That's not a problem either. But it's good clothes. Whereas I'm seeing people just plow through clothes time and time again and making so many clothes that how many people are going to wear them?
Right. Well, I mean, and the fact is we have become such a consumable society. And I was talking to a gentleman, a musician who's releasing a record this Friday, and I've listened to his record, and he created this to be listened to from beginning to end. And I think he's in his early 30s. So beginning to end, you're supposed to listen to the record. And he's released several singles on Spotify. And we got into a discussion because now people don't want that album experience. They want, I want a new single each month. I want a new single each month. And it's like and I presented to him, I said, can you imagine? And granted, he's younger. I said, can you imagine if they did that with The Wall, with Pink Floyd's The Wall? And you took away these massive albums that you have to listen to as an experience. Can you just taking that away? I mean, do you see what you're missing by doing that? Because we're becoming such a consumable society, we're actually losing a bigger picture of things.
I remember the first time I listened to Money off the album, and it was like a played on the radio, and I just found that a very strange experience because I'm just used to listening to the whole album. And it was always usually at the end of an all-night party when the morning sun was coming up, and you'd put Money on, and you go Dark Side of the Moon on, and you go, wow, what is he singing about? This is amazing stuff. It's like really profound, and it's a journey. He's taking you through this whole journey of time and space and expanding your mind. And then these like the woman who was singing amazing riffy stuff, and it was a journey that you went on. And that's what I did with my album Anahato. It was supposed to be a journey. You listen from beginning to end. It's a journey up your chakra system, as it were, the Eastern philosophies of chakras. And you should listen to it from the beginning to end, but also focus your mind on the areas where the music's coming up through. And it's designed to do that, but it's not the way that the world is, or human beings are being programmed to listen to music now.
Or actually, anything in our life. That's the thing. It's like as we've progressed, and even like TikTok has now come out with a 15-second video. Okay, so we went from the MTV attention span to 5 minutes, maybe max, then to the internet where we're keep making that attention span get smaller and shorter. And how does your brain can't function like that. Your brain can't handle learning anything like that because you don't have focus.
Very sophisticated brain. And this is what I explain when I'm doing my course with people when they've got issues with other people, especially. Is if you think of all your life, say this microphone is you, and you've got all these different people in your life have got all these different experiences putting onto you, and they've got all these different experiences coming onto them. So they're not always going to be reacting from their best place. Neither are you. And it becomes this complicated web where your brain can put it a little bit better together when you realize, oh, well, Janie said that to me, but she'd just been through that. And I knew him who put her through that, and he's just been through that. And then you become a little bit more compassionate with if someone's treated you a little bit badly. But if you've got a problem with someone interacting with you, when you're in the state of not having that compassion, you're bang, get away from me. Who the hell do you think you are? And this is where it's all going wrong with humanity, because we're not looking at that grey space in between us of a difference of opinion. Thomas Jefferson said, that's where the magic lies. The two differing opinions, if you look at the middle bit, that's where the magic lies, and where you can actually work out, okay, we can both agree on this little area here or this little area here. And that's where your democracy actually comes from. That's what it's supposed to be. And especially in America with the founding fathers, obviously Thomas Jefferson being one of them, that was it. But that's going out the window, because there's no grey area. It's just, I'm here, you're there, that's it. Mm-hmm. And there's a problem there with our brains. And you're right, it's because partly to do with our attention span being crushed, and also to do with us being in a perpetual state of fear. I'm not sure whether I mentioned menticide when I was speaking to you last time, which was a fascinating word that I found. And basically what it means is the destruction of the mind. So what happens is you get a series of frightening events that happens, usually on a big scale, because you're talking about menticide, the destruction of a group mind. So big events happening, whether contrived, conspired, or just happening naturally, they keep happening, and they happen again. If someone starts putting the dots together and saying, hang on a minute, people are actually gaining from these problems, that's when you gaslight them, i.e. you tell them, oh, don't worry, you're not feeling so well today, you should go back and take a sleep because you should take a nap. So you've got this problem happening, which they call menticide, destruction of the group mind. So if you do pop out of that, you're gaslighted. And then in the mainstream media, when they giving you a narrative, they don't always close the narrative. So in NLP, they call it an open loop. So they just pop in a narrative to you. So you suddenly get this opinion put into you. And therefore, that's when you take this black and white stance on, say, a narrative that's happening, where there's probably 1,000,001 things that have happened in that grey area that have caused that to happen. So on the other side as well, if someone's, say, pro-establishment, someone's anti-establishment, you'll have all the conspiracy guys going, rah, 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 and all the other guys going, rah, 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 and they'll never meet in the middle because they can't see all the different nuances that have happened to bring that position into where it is. And I just found when I was listening to someone being interviewed on that, and they were mentioning that menticide, gaslighting and open loops, I just went, well, yeah, that's kind of explaining where we're at as human beings at the moment, because there's a great divide, and I'm trying to bridge that by getting people to open their minds a little bit to the nature of their reality, which is what I do. And it's hard because you're coming up against really strong belief systems. And I try and say, let's just try and get to the truth of things rather than trying to hold on to a belief system. And that's really difficult. It's really difficult because that's what we're trained to do, because our attention span gets shorter and shorter and shorter. And we don't want to come out of our comfort zone, which I call our ego. So you want to stay safe in your place, which is true. We all do. We want to stay safe. But that gets wired into you, so you don't want to come out of your comfort zone. So therefore, you'll fight in any way that you possibly can to stay in that comfort zone. And it's just, to me, it's fascinating how this time that we're living in is unfolding, because you've got enormous, amazing things happening on our Earth, absolutely beautiful things, but also terrible things that are happening as well. And you're going, wow, this is what they call in the Tao philosophy, the yin and yang of the world. Is like, whoa, it really is dark and light at the moment, with elements of light in the dark and elements of dark in the light. It's quite incredible what we're seeing, how it's all coming out at the moment. It is, the world is an incredible place, but there's so many, I personally think there's so many brilliant things happening. I think all of this stuff that's happening to us will melt away, go to the side, because I think human beings are so intelligent, incredible, resourceful. Once I think they get past the conditioning of being stuck in a digital world, I think the kids will come through this. And I've got things to back that up as well, because they in Korea, South Korea, they set up the Benjamin School, where these young kids are learning to be the best versions of themselves. And when I was over in Korea in 2016 with the British Ki Gong team, and we did our tournament there, which we won, it was amazing to see them. And these kids of like 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, a few of them have became a head chef in one of the top Korean restaurants in Seoul. One of them became a really top mechanic. They're really amazing human beings, like so bright, resourceful, not worried about anything, no fear in them, confident, polite, courteous, all the good things. And you go, wow, if they can do that, because now in South Korea, I believe they've got Ki Gong on the in every school, going into every school now, which is what I've trained under. So basically, that's all what Ki Gong is. Sounds like this fancy martial art. It's just getting to know yourself, i.e. taking the time to meditate. And meditation isn't sitting there on the side of a mountain going, which it could be if you wanted it to be. It's just you focusing on yourself. How do you feel right now? And people go, I don't know. I feel a bit fuzzy in the head. Oh, okay. Well, let's do some breathing. Try and clear that. It's just knowing yourself and knowing what you need, because you know some of the callings of the physical body. So when you're thirsty, if your mouth is dry, you've left it too long before you drank water. But drink some water or tea or something. And same with the hunger. Hunger could be thirst, or it could be that you need to eat something. So you haven't been diligent with your food intake. So same with our energy and our focus and our concentration. That's what they call in the Vedas Sakshi Bhav, which I thought was incredible. It was like the original spiritual beginnings of mindfulness. So all it means is witness mentality. Witness your mentality as you go through your life. It's so easy to just all the good stuff.
It's easy also to let the distractions of the world. I mean, I have a friend who she'll be like, well, I looked at the news today, and I'm like, she goes, and it just messed with my head. And I'm like, then why do it? Why? It's not, I say to herself, and I mean, I'm not saying stick your head in the sand, know what's going on in the world, but you're letting it affect you at your core. So then, how is this actually going to help you if it's just going to, just wear you down? And this brings into the other thing of how are we socialized? For the last roughly 1.5 years, 2 years, we've all socialized this way. We've socialized with mask on, so we couldn't see everybody's face completely. And so the socialization of who we are has completely changed. And some people have lost their noodle online. I mean, you've seen them go nuts in a grocery store or whatever. And it's like, I understand civil discord, but that's not civil discord. That's just straight up being a toddler.
Yeah. It's almost going back into their childhood ways of being. And I've seen that a lot with the elderly people that I've been training with the Ki Gong. It took them a long time to come back into the classes. And when they're doing, they're looking very hollowed out, I think is the best word, and just empty. In the wrong way, because that's what we're trying to do with the Ki Gong, is like empty yourself, get rid of all the garbage and all the stress. But they look like sunken.
Well, that's the thing. There's two different ways to be empty. There's an empty way to have all the toxic stuff out. And then there's the empty way where you are so overwhelmed with everything that has happened or gone on that you are gutted and you're numb. I mean, it's the U2 song. I'm feeling numb.
Yeah. So it was the numbness and the overwhelm of coming into human interactions again. And I've really worked hard. I really put all my energy into the first few months of coming out of lockdown to entice more people to come. And they came back. All the people came back in the end. I lost quite a few of them just through being isolated. They died because they just couldn't cope with it anymore, which I found really sad. But the ones who did come through, they really appreciate actually coming back together. And I said, all of this stuff that's happening in the world, don't focus on the news, but know what's happening. Find your news sources where you can find it in a way that you can drip feed it to yourself, rather than having a half an hour, however long the news show is, bombardment of just negative. Because it's not, we're not designed to be like that. We're designed, our nervous system is designed for quick bang. Oh my goodness me, this is bad, I'm out of here. That's what it's designed to do. I'm going to play like a dead mouse and just collapse. That's what we're designed to do. We're not designed to have this 24/7 bombardment of negativity towards us. And this is where all the problems are coming from, because people are turning on the news, they're believing in it, they're seeing that they're forming belief systems from what's being told to them. And there's always an angle. Doesn't matter whether it was left or right, or a corporate angle or a lobbyist angle or any other. There's always an angle to it. There's never 100% truth coming out of any news, I don't think, personally. And that's only my opinion, but it's what I feel is true. And I look at it, and I've been watching. Well, actually, it was when one of my Hare Krishna friends, when I used to hang out with him, he said to me, "Why watch the news?" He says, "It's just going to be another cycle in a few years' time with the same thing happening, but just different players." That's all he said. He says, "I've been watching it for years now, and just see the different players come in and out." I said, "Why worry about it?" And I go, "Yeah."
Well, and there's 2 points here, because yeah, we do actually cycle through, and astrology ties nicely into. There used to be an astrologer, he passed away since then, but he would take the current astrology and match it up to past historical events, which was always fascinating how during these cycles they play out exactly how they played out before. The other thing, when you were talking, do you remember the movie The Fifth Element?
Oh yeah,
when she's watching that, when she's trying to learn and she's watching the television and all the pain she sees because of all the violence and how she's crying. I mean, that is the perfect image for what you've described, because that is it. We immerse ourselves in this toxic, fearful place. How are we ever going to see that there's hope? If we're constantly, our news here, national news here on one of the channels, they'll always do this. It's news, maybe a positive story about something that's found medically. And then we'll give you a happy story at the end. But we've given you all this grief and murder and genocide and everything else prior, to put a little bow on it with a cherry on top and go, here you go. Here's the story about the puppy that found its owner 2,000 miles away.
Yeah, where did that come from? That's what interests me about the ufology community. I've seen things in the sky I can't explain. I've got no idea. I've got no claims to know any of it. But if you think about it from a different perspective again, and then ask why, if there are, I can't believe that we're the only species in an enormous universe. There's no way of that. But who would be interested if they were like a more advanced race to come down and speak to us because of exactly what you just said there? Who would be interested? You watch all the terrible treatment of human beings, terrible treatment of animals, terrible treatment of our natural resources, terrible treatment of nature, and they'll fly over and go, I'm not going there.
Yeah, it's like lock the doors, lock the doors, roll up the windows. We're not going there. But you bring up a good point about UFOs. It ties back into what you were initially talking about, the pyramids, because these pyramids are placed in specific energy points in the world. And people are like, well, no, that was just man did that and everything else. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
Possibly, but really?
Yeah.
I mean, I agree. I think it's very much our ego that says, oh, well, we're the only ones here. Really? No. No.
In the Vedic scripts, they talk about the demigods, and they're not from this planet. And the same with, they talk about the Nephilim in the Bible, and they're not from this planet. It says it in the Bible, for goodness sake. It says daughters of, it's the daughters of the women, but these fallen angels come and produce children with the daughters of man. So it's saying that the Nephilim, and in the Sumerian text they talk about the Anunnaki and things like that. I mean, I'm no expert on it, but it's just fascinating to think that some of these enormous structures that have been built on our planet are like, we couldn't build them today. They're so incredibly technologically advanced, and some of the clues that they've left on the planet, you go, how could they have left these things on the planet? And how would they leave us clues to say that we were here, but we were bigger than actually you will know? And that's when it comes to like crop circles and stuff like that. You go, well, yeah, 4 or 5% look like they're real. Whereas there's some jokers making up 95% of them. It's incredible to think of what's happening on this world, which is why I call this illusionary world, which is what that comes from the Vedas, like the Maya, the illusion world, which is this bombardment of just negativity. When actually in your little place where you live, this isn't so bad at the moment. I can drop my shoulders. I can breathe in. I can enjoy this moment. Hang on a minute. This is not so bad. And I personally feel that's part of our lessons as a journey. If you want to call us a spiritual being, spirituality is you. It's not reading a book and learning it and going through all these different rituals and revelations that you got to do and learning. Yes, wise words will always give you wisdom, but it's up to you to incorporate that wisdom into your life. And that's your spirituality. No one tells you what it should be, I feel. I think you should be sovereign as a human being. No one tells you how you should be. And I've got great respect for tribes like Aborigines and Native American Indians who say, actually, my spirituality is very personal to me, and I'm not sure if I want to share it with you at the moment. And I think that's okay, because it is. It's your own personal experience. And in our culture today, if you have like a deeper experience to this life, like I meet lots of clairvoyants and clairsentients, and they see things a bit deeper into our reality. People laugh at them. We had one at school. There was a girl called Rachel, and she went one day at school. She went bananas, and because we were close friends with her, we took her back to her house, and for a whole night she was like trembling. There's a plane crash. It's a plane crash coming. It's a plane, and she kept saying there's a plane crash coming. Sure enough, next day, quite close to us, a plane crashed, and you go, my goodness me, what was that all about? And then you realise there's a lot more to us than meets the eye.
I get stuff in my dreams. I get a lot of stuff in my dreams. A month before my husband died, I had a dream about basically where he died at, and a tornado picking up the car and saying, I don't want to die. And he died in the car.
Okay.
So, I mean, it's more detailed than that. But yeah, I mean, when people sit there, and I've talked to spirits and stuff, and it's like when people sit there and go, well, that's not real. How do you, my husband was always a good propensity for asking, how do you know? The first couple of years we were together. But after a certain point, he was getting his own stuff. It's like, dude, just face facts. Just realize you got it. And we all are intuitive. It's just it goes back to what you're saying. We're all so inundated with outside stuff that we don't connect with it. It's just we each connect differently with it. But then when we are so bombarded, we just shut it down and go, okay, we'll listen to fear and everything else that's being compounded on us and embrace that because it's easier. Now, before we go anywhere, because I know we're almost an hour in, the dream method, you wanted to talk about that. So let's talk about that.
Yeah, my dream method, I've just been doing this, exactly what we're just talking about, is actually breaking down our preconceptions of the life. So the first part of the dream method is D, which is discoveries. And it's just discovering what triggers you, what's stuck in your body. Now they've got scientific evidence showing that our emotions do get stuck in our body. Where it's a good question, because you need to find that out. But it's firstly finding out the cycle. So it's discovering your cycles, where your negative cycles come. If you keep turning on the news and you're getting bombarded with all this stuff, nothing will ever come to you in that respect, because you just got this washing machine of garbage just going round and round in your head. So it's discovering those problems. And the best thing to do with that is to write down your negative thoughts and your positive thoughts on a regular basis, so that you can come back to them and realize what's rubbish and what's real to you. And it's really want people to start to discover what's real and what's not. There's truths, fundamental truths, really buried inside of us, like integrity and diligence and responsibility, courteousness. And I feel these, and trust with each other. I think these are all really inside of us that are with each other as human beings. And we lose that because we're in these negative cycles. So the first part of the dream method is discovering that. And then the second part is the realizations of that with simple techniques that you can start to soothe that very quickly, especially that mistrust with yourself mainly, but with other people. You can start to trust other people. So you start to realize, yeah, okay, Now I've found out where these negative cycles are, and now I want to move myself into realizing where they are. What do I do to get rid of them? You actually embrace them, because we're taught in this society to push them down, ignore them. So you meet these men who look like rocks, they're just all power, and then you scratch that surface and go, oh God, but that really hurt, and I'm just putting up a front, and you go, well, look, there you are. That's you as a human being, not this thing as a front. And women do it as well. It's not just men, but women do it as well. We put up these fronts that actually, if you scratch the surface, it hurts, and they're not embracing their life properly, not embracing people properly. And that's what the third part of that's the E in the dream method. And I remember that as a musician, when I was touring and gigging, I was always going and having the deeper, meaningful conversations after. Well, I was the bass player of the band, for goodness sake. The bass players are notorious for going and having deep, meaningful conversations with everybody. So I was doing this, and I was realizing there was a lot of people who had put up this great fun. Yeah, great gig, but oh God, life is. And then all of a sudden the problems started coming out. They're putting up this facade, this front. And I realized it's like embracing. It's to do with your heart chakra. Because especially if you're empathetic or a bit of an empath, your heart goes in and out like a concertina. So one minute you go, oh, I want to save the world. I want to say, no, hang on a minute, I can't even save myself. You got this whole thing going in and out. And that's what I found with a lot of the clients that I work with, is to bring that into balance. So that actually people think is cutting out your empathy. It's not. It's actually your empathy actually starts to increase, and you realize, actually, if I put more good energy into this collective consciousness of ours, this is what's going to fix this mess and corrupted sort of dirt that we're in at the moment. And that's how you do it. So that's the E. The A is actually actualizing your life to that. So you started to learn different types of meditations and rituals, and you start to actualize the life that you want, i.e., which is what I do now. I'm laughing a lot. With people, I speak to people a lot, and I laugh a lot because I find it funny. I'm thinking, these people are still doing this. You got to be kidding me, right? They're still getting away with that. And I used to be really angry. Now I'm not so angry. Still got the anger inside of me, but I turn that into a positive energy. So I'm actualizing the life that I want while working against all of this corruption and all this disharmony that's happening in human beings. And the last part of the dream method is making all of this stuff your own. So there's like little meditations that you can learn, or little techniques that can really hack you into the moments quickly, very quickly now. And you can make this practice your own so that you stay calm. You can stay connected with yourself rather than being thrown away with these thoughts or feelings. So if you think about thoughts, you can observe them. But as soon as you start to interact with them, you start to think. Mm-hmm. And I can't remember his name, so that's a bit useless. But this guy, he works with animals. He's an Englishman, and he works with animals, and he teaches like a little technique about just observing your thoughts, so your brain sort of starts to calm down. The brain frequency, the brain activity starts to come down. So you're lowering. And he works with troubled animals. And he does it with these troubled animals, which is what I've done now with this dream method of coming this together, is to bring this frequency down and down and down. And now with my cats, we've got a problem with our cats because little boy doesn't want to get on with the little girl. And he keeps wanting going and nicking her food. And I used to scream at him, Jimmy, get back here. Now what I'm doing is lowering my brain frequency, coming down into that moment, and just telepathically picturing him going back to his bowl. And now he doesn't go and try and find her food. He goes to his own food. I'm going, my goodness me, there's a communication we've got here, which I think we all need to try and learn in some respects, because it's a far deeper than conversation and words. Words are really sloppy, and you can misinterpret them. You can take them the wrong way, and we tend to get oversensitive with words sometimes, and I think that's a problem as well. But this dream method gives you all of that, which is why I love doing it, teaching it, because you see the results from somebody who's completely stressed out and all over the place to someone who's really calm and realizing what their profound purpose in this life. And mainly the profound purpose I think we all have is to help each other. Because when I speak to people saying, when do you feel your best? And I used to really made me think, because I thought I've had some amazing moments when I've been gigging. Amazing moments as a live musician. I've had some amazing moments in playing live, obviously. But I think the most profound shakes of me is when I'm actually helping somebody and seeing them improve in front of me. I think that is the real, I even get goosebumps just saying that now. It's like, oh my goodness me, that's incredible. Look at you now. That's incredible. From someone who was almost suicidal to someone who's like, yeah, I'm going to get on with this now and get on. You know, it's like fantastic stuff. So it's really, to me, I love it's like going from like your emotional wounds as a child or whenever they were, to really finding a profound purpose. That's what I call the dream method. And it's not about setting goals. Because our left brain, society, madness sets the goals. And therefore you got that goal and you do everything in your left brain, physicality with your body moving towards it, you can, and you exhaust yourself. Whereas if you do it with like a dream or an actualization or your imagination, which our imagination gets crushed when we're very young, you do that with your imagination, your subconscious will start moving towards that place. And that's when the big things start to happen. Maybe not big things as in massive YouTube numbers or massive record sales or anything like that, but the
what
big
is meant
things.
For you.
Yeah, exactly. What's meant for you. So that's actualizing that through the dream method. And that's what I've come up with as a course, online course and coaching course. And it's how we should be. I really do believe this is how we should be as human beings, rather than this left brain automaton that's getting more and more attached to technology that's going to not be very happy at all if it carries on this way. We're going to see less and less, happiness is the wrong word, less and less joy and interaction with the natural world. And we are nature. We are nature. Mustn't ever forget that. We're not detached from nature. We are nature. We're part of this natural world. We're like a piece of bacteria in our gut sitting on the earth. So we're like a little piece of bacteria on the earth. So these little pieces of bacteria in our gut are intelligent. We're intelligent. We sit on the earth. The earth is intelligent, and we have intelligence even beyond that. So where that intelligence goes beyond us is incredible, but I've got no idea what it is. But when I've got into the meditation of samadhi, they call it samadhi, where you reach, you're not male or female, or you're not anything really of this physical domain. You're kind of in that space. You go, well, what is that? Because I've got no concept of that whatsoever as a human being. But when I get to that place in the meditation, you go, now I see what the yogis are talking about. Now I see what the mystics are talking about. But I don't want to be one, but I get what they're on about. And I think that's where a lot of people are heading now as human beings, just by living a life of passion and goodness. So you do what you like doing, but make sure, while we still have this crazy monetary system, it can be monetized a little bit so that you can survive off of it, rather than living off a dream which is ridiculous. Like a lot of kids I speak to who are coming into music go, what do you want to do music for? Work, because I want to be famous. I go, no. You do music because you love it.
Yeah.
You do music because you love it.
I had that conversation with my stepdaughter. I had left her dad like 6 years prior, and for her 16th birthday, she wanted a bass guitar. And while she was acting out and everything, and they called me to come talk to her. I'm like, okay. And so we're in the car, and I'm like, she's like, yeah, I got a bass guitar. I'm going to be in a band. And I just looked at her and said, did you know that I used to be a bassist? She goes, what? I'm like, yeah, I used to have bass guitar. I used to play. She goes, really? I'm like, yeah. She goes, I said, but I got to tell you this. She said, what? I said, unless you really love music, don't do it. She goes, what do you mean? I said, don't do it. I said, my mom used to tell me to, go to school and get a degree. And then if I wanted to be a bassist, do that. I said, but the fact of the matter is I wanted to be a bassist because I wanted to be famous and I wanted to meet some people. And that's why I did it. I said, and that's why I enjoyed playing, don't get me wrong. And I could play very easily, but I didn't do it because it was my passion. I could sit down and write, and that I'm passionate about my writing, But that's the thing. So many people now, especially nowadays, it's like, if I can get those numbers on TikTok, I started posting daily on TikTok. I do a card reading on TikTok. Some days I get 2,000 hits. Some days I get 400. You know what? I'm okay either way. I don't care. And I think that's where you have to really just go, I'm releasing the control. When you were talking, because right now I'm at a real big junction in my life that I will be moving. And this is a house I've lived in since 2012. And there's a lot of flux in my life. And there's been times recently that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm scared to death. But then I sat there this weekend and I thought about, it's like, okay, so when Live Aid was announced, I was babysitting and I was like, man, I really, really want to go. I'm living in Shreveport. There's no way they're going to have anything for me to be able to go. This is a pipe dream. I'm 17 years old. Fast forward several months, the radio station's giving away tickets. My friend and I have to stay up so many nights. And the night before the final day of the contest, this girl comes running out. She's like, oh my gosh, my sister just won tickets to Rick Springfield. And we're like, well, that's great. She ran off and my friend and I looked at each other. And we're like, we're going to Live Aid. We wouldn't find this out until Monday. This was Saturday. And Sure enough, we ended up. But the whole fact of the matter is, I believed it so wholeheartedly. And that's the thing. I think if you release the fear, and even like the situation, it's like, I don't know where I'm going, but I do know ultimately, just like this house that I live in, ultimately somehow it's going to work out. And I know a lot of people are like, well, that's just pie in the sky, willy-nilly attitude. But it's like, you have to get there because you can't live in the negative. My mother would tell me I was going to fall flat on my face, and maybe I will, but I'll get back up. And that's where we have to look at that energy and change our mindset.
Yeah, it's getting up. It's not looking at the fall, it's looking at the comeback. The comeback is, you can make the comeback even more powerful. There's many times when in the music business where I was working as a musician, things would just go really badly wrong. You think, oh God, why am I doing this? And it did get to the point where I got to a certain age. And I was talking about this with my wife actually yesterday, and you got to bow out gracefully, sort of thing, and say, I'm not young enough or resilient enough in my body to do this anymore. And that I got to that point, I think, and so kind of bow out gracefully. But yeah, it's putting it into like a imagination. This is going to happen for me. With not even a belief, you just know this is going to happen for you. And yes, you might have a little bit of disruption on the way, but that disruption usually makes you stronger so you can get to a better place anyway. I love that analogy of the chicken and the egg, or the chick and the egg. Whereas if you see a chick pecking out of an egg, and yeah, your natural instinct as a caring human being is to help it pick the shell off the egg. But if you do that, then that little chick might not be strong enough to go through the next phase of its life. So I think when problems do come, they do actually make you stronger. So I think is accepting that. We say get rid of security and control and recognition in the Tao philosophy. I think security, don't be stupid, like give everything away and just go and live off the street. But you can do that because you'll probably end up in an ashram in India and you'll probably be fine, Let go of security, but not be silly about it, but let go of the feeling of wanting to feel secure. Just give in to the rolling way that life works. Security, if you let go of recognition, i.e. don't do things because you want to be recognized, do things because you love doing them, which is what you were talking about. And security, recognition, and control. Why do you want to control everything? It becomes boring. Oh, I know if I do that, that's going to happen. If I do that, that's going to happen. If I do that, what's going to happen? I don't know. Wow, that sounds exciting. It's just we've been conditioned so much to want to have to control and be recognized for doing things and feeling secure in ourselves and in our surroundings. There's no... What I loved about the music business was it was wild, and days were just unfolding, and you go, oh, just give in to it. If you try to hold on to it, it would really screw you up. So you just unfolded with how reality came out, and I think that's what we're missing as human beings now, because it becomes get up, have your breakfast, go to work, get home, have your dinner, watch TV, go to bed, repeat. And it's like, you don't want to do that because it just makes you dull, and it kills your passion for life. Whereas if you, like me, I've got many different things I do. I'm actually starting to learn jazz chords now, which is quite interesting. So I do a lot of Zoom work. I do a lot of Ki Gong work as well. And in between the times when I've got 10 minutes, I just sit there and pick up another jazz chord, start putting it into like my own one. And I'm listening to myself playing, going, oh my God, what's happened to you? You this. The
thing we evolve. And the thing, what I want to touch on too is about, when people look at manifesting something, when you're trying to create your vision of what your life is going to be, you have to release that control, because guess what? You can picture everything perfect. And this is a problem with a lot of people. They will think they want something so badly that when they get it, it's just not, because they put such high expectations on it. But the fact of the matter is, you have to look at it and go, and lower your expectations, just lower and be accepting of what is provided. It may not be perfect, but guess what? If this is what you asked for and it happened, then you work from it. You deal with what you have and you move forward and accept it.
But we don't, do we? It's like the first time I got a publisher, a song published from a publisher, and I got really excited, and then after about 5 minutes, the excitement dropped. I go, well, what next? it was like the big build up to get this thing done, and I was thinking, well, no, just let it go. And then when it happened, I think when I got to deal with New World Music, I walked down to my wife and said, "Oh yeah, they've accepted that I'm going to sign up with them and get it released on their label." She went, "Rah!" I was like, it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool. It's all right. It's just it's just one of those things, and it is. It's just accept it, and it's never as big as you think it's going to be. I think it was the Simpsons, which have some wonderful insights into human beings, and it was a French guy who was like dating Marge. He goes, sometimes it's just the anticipation that's more thrilling than the actual event happening. It's the anticipation, it's the build-up. Mm-hmm. So if you're not having that big build-up and you're allowing things just to unfold out, and then these things happen, I think you appreciate it more. It's the anticipation before something happens. Like, yeah, this is going to happen. It's going to happen. I'm going to fulfill my dreams. And then, no, life never stops. It never stops. And when you do that, you can see where people get, especially when I work with the elderly, when they get so bitter because they wanted to get to this certain place. They got to this certain place, and then they're so tight with that, they never let go. So they're still tight and rigid when you're trying to get them to do like soft Ki Gong moves, to trying to move their wrists or just sway or do some deep breathing where their gut comes in and out. They're so tight because they're stuck in that position. They've been stuck in that position for years. And you've got to let it flow. Everything is supposed to flow. The energy is supposed to flow through us. Our thoughts and mind, everything's supposed to flow. Your thoughts are supposed to flow through you. And we grab hold of a thought because it's negative, and then we take that thought process along with us, and it becomes a negative buzz in your head. And therefore it's just another negative thought will come and attach itself to it. And then you're all of a sudden you're getting paranoid, and you think, oh my God, or you're getting depressed or upset, or it's terrible.
And the thing is, whether that's that negative thought has come from the outside, and we tend to want to have the outside not label us, but form us. And it's true. I mean, that's how we learn in school. We learn from our parents. But the fact of the matter is that's not who we truly are at our core. No. So we have to try to get, especially because like you were saying earlier, our imagination, everything is tamped down. You're supposed to follow the rules. You're supposed to do this. And when you mentioned something about religion earlier, it's like the fact about religion, modern day religion is taught to control us. We are taught that, well, you can't do that because that's a sin. You can't do that but yet we're going to ignore that you shouldn't be eating shellfish, or you shouldn't be wearing a blended fabric. We're going to ignore that. We pick and choose to see what's going to control you. That being said, you have to step back and go, okay, so who am I at my core, and where did all this programming start, and how do I deprogram myself?
When you think about, this is why I teach in the dream method, you think about the DNA that comes into you from your mother and your father, and both of these is carrying information. So you're going to have that swirling about in you as well. Yeah, it's all like, and then you've got this energy force, which some people call your soul or your consciousness or whatever you want to call it, that comes in as well. That's got information or knowledge or memories with that. So you've got these three things that are happening inside of you already as a human being. And they speak in the Vedas about you becoming conscious in the womb, even though you're in a very low brain state, you still have consciousness coming into you in the womb. So that is a pretty difficult place to be if you're coming from a very free place, from your consciousness, which is expanding all over the place and it's coming into this tight place. You're going to be traumatized when you come out of birth. It's going to be hard. And then you've got this theta brain for 7 years that is just absorbing information all the time to try and work out what the heck am I doing here. So that you get a lot of conditioning at that point, which conditions your subconscious of like, no, don't do that. Stop being so stupid. Don't think about things like that. You're being, your head's in the clouds, all this kind of rubbish. So we're getting conditioned. No. So then you say, well, what are we? Then comes school at 7. And they go, well, here you are. This is you. This is what you got to do. Here's your business. Here's your career. This is how the world works. And that's it. Full stop. Thank you very much. Good night. See you when you're 72 and when you come into the funeral, your funeral. It's like, no, there's so much more to it than that. And I personally feel this is a learning school. Like Earth is like a learning school where you're unpeeling your onion. You just keep unpeeling it and you're unpeeling it. You're trying to get down to the core of you, which is so important, because once you get to that core of you, and you can start connecting with the other elements of you. In the Vedic scripts, they talk about it being a chariot, which I love this analogy. Have you got the 5 senses being the 5 horses that drag the chariot along? So sometimes one horse might get a little bit more like tastes. You might like food a little bit more, or drinking a little bit more, whatever. You might want to watch things, so you get hooked into a box set or whatever. So sometimes the 5 senses are running away with themselves and they're being controlled by the mind, which is the reins. And the mind will throw up thoughts and you can just ignore them. You don't have to accept the thoughts that come up. And usually the thoughts aren't you if they're coming from the 5 senses, because they're not you. Our thoughts are not us. And then you've got the charioteer, which is your intellect, which is always getting the knowledge from your 5 senses in your mind. So it should be growing, but I don't think it's growing so much in today's world. Then you have the chariot, which is your ego or sense of self, which we call the solar plexus chakra in our Ki Gong. And you can polish that up, make it all nice and tidy, or you can leave it scruffy. It's up to you. But at the back of it is your observer, which is what they call the soul. So you're looking at your charioteer, your mind, your 5 senses and your chariot, and it just observes. It doesn't have any interaction with it or any power over it whatsoever. But in saying that, the charioteer and the chariot and the mind and the reins and the horses can all get an influence from this observer. So it can be influenced by it, but the observer cannot tell you anything. So because of free will, there is free will on this planet, can't tell you anything, but you can get information from that. And when you break down all of these elements to you and you start to meditate and get into this observer consciousness, you go, wow, this all looks so completely different, absolutely completely different. And what we're doing, we're all stuck in this place where we've been conditioned to see how it is. And when you look over here and you see actually how you can observe it, this is madness.
But basically what you're painting, I mean, I know it's not, but it's the matrix.
Yeah. Which they call the Maya.
In the layman's terms, it's the matrix, because, you think steak tastes like this, but in all honesty, did it really taste like that? No.
Yeah. I think the Matrix wasn't really a film. It was more of an observation of one way of looking at us as a battery for a matrix, a place where we get stuck in, then we think it's real. And that's what our ancestors called it, the Maya, the illusory world that you get sucked into, either by your five senses, by your mind, by your intellect, by your chariot, and your observer's just sitting there going, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? What are you doing? And then finally, you if you do, you can reconnect back with your observer, and you go, okay, I was a bit of an idiot then. I'll improve on that. And you can do this. And yes, religion is thou shalt not, thou shalt not, thou shalt not. And I think within reason, I think you should do things, as long as you don't hurt or harm anybody, you should experiment with all these different things, especially when you're young.
Well, I mean, why do schools, and I don't know about over there, but over here, schools do not really embrace sexual education. We try to teach you abstinence. And okay, but let's be honest. Kids are going to be curious, and they're more curious now than they've ever been before. And they're starting younger. But we want to teach them abstinence. We don't want to teach them about birth control or anything else, or we don't want women to know about pleasure. But why is that? Is it about control? Very much so. And if we have you guys feeling good, then you're not going to be in fear. So then we can't control. So the hippies were kind of onto something back in the late 60s, because it was very freeing. And, but
I think also education in the respect that if you're going to involve, I like to call it making love rather than sexual experiences, if you're going to do that, you have to be careful, because if you produce a baby, that's a life. And I think a lot of kids who are getting involved with like having children at a really early age are horribly surprised. Yeah. So the education for all of that is terrible. It's terrible as far as I'm concerned, and it needs to be addressed. It does, because it shouldn't be taboo. It is part of us, and yes, it should be kept to the bedroom, I think. Yeah. But I'm not into Caligula and all this, like the big orgies and all this kind of, even though I've seen them in the music business.
I was going to say, you're in the music business, so don't play innocent on that one, because I've heard of underwear parties and whatnot. So,
it's been incredible what you do see. But I'm honest, well, I didn't get involved with it, but I saw it. And I think that was wrong. That was like over liberal in that respect. But I think it should be taught, and we should be allowed to explore these feelings. And what worries me most of all is the use of chemicals with children who are going through feelings of having, maybe they want to be a boy in the girl's body, or maybe they want to be a girl in the boy's body, because I think we all go through these different hormonal changes, chemical reactions in our body, and to actually act on that before it's been fully either moved out of the body, or it could have just been a whim or a fancy, or it could have been anything like that, and it needs to be fully explored before anything's acted. But it seems to me that there's like they're putting things in the body that are blocking hormones and blocking feelings and thoughts and stuff like that. I'm going, oh my goodness me, you're actually starting to change the interactions of the chemistries in your body, which is why I think it's amazing that this body and brain, or Ki Gong stuff, is happening in Korea, because they'll have a better sense of what's happening in their body when they're mature and going through puberty and things like that. They'll have more of an understanding of actually analysing what's happening in their body, rather than going, like you say, to an outside source. So what's happening to me? What's happening to me? Then, because that outside source won't really know what's happening in that body. And I think because we're so intelligent that we will work out what sexuality we are, what we should be doing about it, and things like that. But it's not. We're turning into like a nanny state where you're going to somebody else always for your answers. And I think all the answers are inside of us, all of them. I really do sincerely believe that.
I mean, I think if your child comes to you and says they feel like they, if it's a girl and they feel like they want to be a boy or whatever, then let them dress that way. Let them play with those gender roles. And then when they get older, then let them deal with that. But I am not an expert, and that's a personal choice. And I support personal choice in a lot of areas, because that's the way it is. As long as you're not hurting somebody, it's a personal choice.
Yeah, no, I've known many people. There's quite a few people in the music business who transvestites. You meet them, and they're lovely people. It's just that's what they choose to do, and it's okay, and there's no problem. And like you say, as long as it's not hurting or harming anybody, that's the most important thing. But it's finding you, I think, really is what I want human beings to do, is finding the true essence of you and why you were here, why you're here, why you were here, why are you here, why are you here? It's like maybe you're here to write, like you say, you love writing. Is what you get really lost in. I get lost in so many different things. Music, yes. Teaching Ki Gong, yes. When I do a really good class, doing really good sound toning sessions, yes. I love all of these different aspects of me. I love writing as well. I love writing short blogs. Not so keen on the big books because it takes a lot of planning. But that's me. I'm very artistic and very quick. But I love writing blogs, and people do respond to them well. They go, wow, you write so nicely. So I love creating. I'm a creator, not at all this left brain trained automaton that most of the people I came out of school with are. They're the average. They go into politics or banking or corporate finance and things like that, because that was the type of school I went to, and I was completely rebelling against it. And my wife met them at one of my gigs that I did, a local gig, and they all came along to see how I was getting on. And she said she couldn't believe that there was like 10 boys came in a group, and they all seemed exactly the same. And they were in their early 20s, all exactly the same. It's like, she couldn't believe it. They all got this. She said to me, what happened to your accent? I should have been speaking like this, typical English public school boy. But no, I kept my Surrey accent. I didn't get convinced with the accent or anything like that. So she couldn't believe it. And I said, that's how much these schools condition people to be like. They go into our society and they just follow the meme that we're born into. And it is a meme. We're born into to think, well, this can't change. And I agree with people like Deepak Chakra, who's saying now, at least he's speaking out and saying, we live in a world that is psychotic, 100%. And when I saw he said that, I thought, whoa, Deepak, that's really stepping the boundaries, because it's true. It is psychotic. And when you look at Krishnamurti's quote I love that quote when he says, it's no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society. And he said that back in the 1970s, I think it was. Oh. So I thought that's pretty strong stuff. And it is getting sicker and sicker and sicker, our society. But in saying that, there's more and more people having conversations like we're having, of like just pushing the boundaries, exploring it with our words, not having a fallout of opinions, or not coming down too hard on one place to say, this is how it is, because we don't know what it is. We don't know how it is. We don't know what this should be. But what we do know is not how it should not be. I think we're starting to agree on certain elements. This shouldn't be like that, but it is. So, and it's actually coming to a way of healing. This shouldn't be like that. This Maya, this illusion. And I think that's happening. I think like parallel groups of people are starting to work outside of like the mainstream. And that's starting to open up, and you're getting wonderful people doing wonderful things, as I say. And it's just wonderful to see human beings coming to their full potential, which is when you do, you go, yeah, I can do so much actually in this world, rather than being stuck in this, oh, what can I do? I'm bored, I've got nothing to do now. Goodness me, there's so much to do.
but you have to be willing to step out. I mean, it goes back to a simple thing of, I had a conversation with somebody about a band. And she's like, well, they would never lie to us. And I'm like, really? She goes, no, they would always tell us the truth. I'm like, and I didn't say anything. I said something to somebody else. I'm like, does she not understand about public relations agents? Does she not understand about fixers and cleaners and people that paint a narrative? Does she not understand that that's basically how our world runs? And I'm not saying that we don't fully know what's going on, but at a certain point, everybody blames the president over here when something goes wrong. But the fact of the matter is, the Senate and Congress have a lot of play before anything gets to the president, unless it's an executive order. So, but we blame the president.
Yeah. Well, he's the
figurehead.
The figurehead is not really the head. I was going to say head of state, but he's not really the head of state. I don't know who is the head of the state. And it is a state as well. I've been watching Homeland recently. I think there's very close analogies of how it works where it's a mess. You've got all these different agencies looking at each other and spying on each other. And then you get somebody high up in that agency having an agenda that comes in from outside. And then it just all plays on each other. And you've got all these different people trying to work out what's really going on, and nobody's got a clue what is really going on. And yet I personally think there is something behind everything that's moving this in a certain way. And I think it's an energy, because if you look, we talk about cycles and astrology. And when you think about the energies that come into the earth that create those cycles of astrology, they call it in the Vedas Kali. It's an energy of Kali. So if somebody's tuned in to that energy of Kali, they'll be acting for the benefit of Kali, that energy. And it's not necessarily sitting there in dark suits and conspiring to do this. It would just be to bring that situation in. And I just find that fascinating.
Well, here's a piece of fascinating. In February, the U.S. hit our Pluto return. So it's the same time when I believe the Declaration of Independence was signed. So as as they were putting it together, so we are all into this whole, now our karma's coming back. How do we play with this? And with Pluto's kind of saying, now you get to see the truth. You're going to get to see things that you didn't want to see.
Yes.
So you'll see the flaws and the cracks. So we'll see.
Well, that's what the Bible says. It is called the apocalypse, the apocalypto, the lifting of the veil.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, I think it's the Mayan calendar. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's like a 750-year cycle. At the end of that, we're coming into like a short golden age in the Vedas. So there's all these different cycles coming in. And that's why it's all going to go a little bit nuts.
We're there with the nuts. The last 2.5 years have been right up there with Nutty Land. That is for certain. That is for certain.
When the news comes on now, I'll put my hand on before it go, oh no.
Sometimes I think, I had a claimant once because I used to work in insurance, and I asked her, I said, is there anything you did to avoid the accident? She goes, I did what I did what I do with my son when he's scared. He's 3 years old. And anytime he's scared, I tell him to put his hands over his eyes and count to 3. Okay, but did you do anything to avoid the car accident? I put my hands over my face, and I'm thinking to myself,
no way.
Yes. I had a recorded statement with this, and I'm just thinking to myself, so you didn't do anything. And in fact, most likely the accident was worse because you didn't do anything.
Jesus.
But how many people are doing? I mean, yeah, I don't watch the news that often. I do look at headlines and stuff, but how many people are sitting there going, okay, you can't totally, but right now, yeah, anything's game. We're going to find out more things that we didn't want to know. And it's just we have to look at the truths. And that's where we will find our peace, I believe, if we look at our truths.
Yeah, like I say, the truths are us, inside of us. And when you teach meditation, you teach Ki Gong, and you teach this sort of connecting with yourself, there's always one thing that's always the same. When somebody gets deeper into their meditation, they find the sea of tranquility inside of them. Is in every single one of us. And when you can connect with that and you share that feeling or thought with somebody else, you go, yeah, I felt that too. So what are we then? Where are we coming from? What are we doing here? And why is this so mad? And that's, to me, that's something, learning about yourself and learning that you are actually much more than your physical body. Your physical body is just a vehicle. And that's a really, for me, that was an enormous paradigm shift and made me a lot happier about everything. And realizing this body, actually, we don't know how much it can tolerate. Because you see what we've been through with all the plagues and all the diseases and everything's in our gut now that's ever been created in this world as a virus and things like that, you see that how amazing our bodies are and how adaptable we are, because if it wasn't there, we'd be dead. If we were born without a bacterial gut coming from our mother's womb, we'd be dead. They tried it. I think they did it with goats, where they had a completely sterile environment where these goats were born into the sterile environment. They tried to keep them as clear from bacteria as possible. As soon as they opened the environment to let them out into the world, they were dead within minutes. Wow. Because of the bacteria hitting them. So we need this amount of dirt for us to survive on this planet, and that's what we don't seem to really get, is that we're part of this, which is why I find it a bit worrying when people just every element of their home is antibacterial sprays and things like that. I just think, what are you doing? Because you need some of that on your hands. You need bacteria on your hands. You need it on your skin. You need everything is connected with each other. And if we are like with my garden, and you're getting the earth to the best possible way that it can be by using your compost and leaf mold and cutting shredding up your leaves, and the soil becomes really soft and full of worms and full of bugs, that's the same as your gut. It's the same elements in that soil as your gut, which is where your food is growing. So we're so connected to this world. It makes me sound like a hippie.
Yeah, but the thing is, I was going to say, most people, when we eat, we don't eat healthy. We eat fast food. We eat, all the processed stuff. Our society has gotten so far away from Sunday dinners that we don't even get out of our car. McDonald's, when I was growing up, used to be, okay, once in a great while, we go inside. And it was a big thing. And now you don't even have to get out of your car.
Nah. And then you've seen people walking along eating. Mm-hmm. Eating's just become like a part of your entertainment. And yeah, Sunday dinners used to be great. Sitting around the table and sharing your food. We still do it here occasionally when we're allowed to. Yeah. When you have like a big spread of food and people just come in, help themselves to food and go out and listen to music, whatever, sit in the garden, hang out. And it's nice to be able to share food like that. But yeah, it's just a takeaway. You drive along, pick your food up, you're eating while you're going along, you're not digesting it properly. And then some of the cameras that they've sent down the gut to watch what this high processed food does to your gut is like, I don't even want to talk about it because it's disgusting.
All you need to say is go watch Super Size Me. It's an older documentary now, but that guy did some damage to his body by eating it. So on that note, this has been an hour and a half conversation, roughly. So is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to say something about?
No, I think we've covered everything from UFOs to consciousness to the nature of our reality to politics to anything else, food. No, we've done a lot. I think we've done a lot today. So,
okay. Well, thank you for coming back on the show.
Anytime, yeah, I'll come back anytime.
So I enjoy talking to Peter, as you can tell, because conversation went a little long. But I think that when we talk about energy and we talk about our thought process, there is a lot to be garnered from that. How do we stop the negative thinking from taking control of our lives? How do we stop it and say, okay, no more? It's easy for us to slip back into old patterns. It's very easy to do that. It's energy. And we feel comfortable if we're stuck sometimes. But know this, you can't make progress if you're stuck. So for yourself, do what he said. Write down positive thoughts, write down negative thoughts, and look at what triggered those negative thoughts. And look at why those thoughts are there. Who told you that? If you can really think about that, who told you that? And think about, if you can, the person that they are or were. And did their words really matter? Because that's going to be freeing in itself. I hope you found other parts of our conversation interesting. I do know about gardening, and I think he is very true about certain things. And the moon, the Farmer's Almanac talks about moon cycles and everything. So there is a lot of truth in that. So if you want to learn gardening, definitely do some research about when you should be planting. I mean, the moon cycles are a very fascinating thing, especially if you study astrology and just even the weather or anything of that nature, because each cycle represents certain things. There's even moon cycles, not that I've subscribed to this, but there's moon cycles about when you should cut your hair if you want it to grow longer. So while all that may seem hooey to some, it's kind of fascinating because there is proof that some of this astrological stuff does play out. So anyway, without further ado, I thank you for tuning into the Better 2 podcast. If you would like to be a guest on the show or have a question, comment, or concern, please email me at Donna@better2podcast.com. That's Donna, Dauna, at better2podcast.com. And if you've missed an episode and want to catch up, you can find it at better2podcast.com. All the episodes are there, as well as our social media links. The show, as always, is brought to you by Kitty Mystic, which is a place where you can get a tarot reading from me. It's located at our website, which is dmneedom.com, dmneedom.com. And there's a Kitty Mystic tab there. There's also tabs for my books, as well as the podcast, the other podcast I do. So, and our sound is always done by Rich Zai of Third Ear Audio. So thank you very much for tuning in, guys. And I hope you have a great weekend, evening, day, whatever it is. And I'll catch you next time, guys. Bye. The Better 2 podcast is mixed, edited, and produced by Rich Zai of Third Ear Audio Productions.